Board of Education, meeting to order. I'm Joe Pasek. I'll be serving as President Pro Temp this evening. If you could all please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Lulo?
Here.
Mr. Lucetti?
Here.
Ms. Janiscolo?
Here.
Mrs. Gladys?
Here.
Mr. Janik?
Here.
Mr. Costick?
Here.
Mr. Kirkman?
And we'll now have public address. We have 3 speakers signed up for this evening. I'd like to remind you, your comments are limited to 5 minutes. And our first speaker is going to be George Birchfield.
Hello, I'm George Birchfield. I'm a sophomore at Lincoln Way Central. Thank you to the superintendent, administrators, and board for your efforts to make our high schools great. I'm here to speak on behalf of the 150 boys and girls who play Lincoln Way High School lacrosse, and also the hundreds of youth players from the Lincoln Way Lacrosse Club, Tinley Park Bulldogs, and Illinois Girls Lacrosse who feed into our district. Thank you for voting yes for lacrosse and for working with our club so that we can play IHSA. Parents have built up the Lincoln Way Lacrosse Club for the past decade, spending countless hours processing registrations, fundraising, coaching, running the clock, and more. Even my grandparents were out in the field setting up cones. I started playing lacrosse in 3rd grade, and I've loved playing for Lincoln Way. Last spring, our boys varsity team made it to the state semifinals. In addition to our athletic accomplishments, we have developed our sportsmanship, and all players had to submit their grades via email every week to maintain eligibility. We also did team community service at Feed My Starving Children. Lincoln Way Lacrosse has provided kids as young as kindergarten an opportunity to play one of the fastest growing sports in America. Some of our Lincoln Way graduates are playing college lacrosse at schools such as Illinois Wesleyan, Beloit College, and Aurora University. Many of our current players are in the recruiting process and anxiously awaiting the spring season. It is always good for kids to have more opportunities of something positive to do with their free time, in addition to being active and learning about teamwork. Thank you so much, and go Lincoln Way.
Our next speaker is Karina Trevino.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Karina Trevino. To my left is Mark Trevino. Mark is my child and is a freshman this year at Lincoln Way West. I want to tell you a little bit about Mark. Mark was valedictorian of Liberty this year with the highest GPA in the class. Mark is a Jack and Cook Scholar, one of 2,000 applicants, only 40 selected. And this year for Summer Challenge, Mark took an SAT, ACT, and placed in the 99th percentile. Mark also placed in the 99th percentile in math in those tests. For future plans, Mark plans to obtain a PhD in math sometime in the future. For summer fun, Mark took an online geometry class and through the CTD Northwestern University. He did very well. So we felt that this year Mark would be better served by advancing to the next math level. We approached West, and I wanted to thank the administration and the faculty for their help in testing Mark and moving Mark up to the next level. I'm very grateful that we are in partnership with the administration and that they are doing what's best for the students, as they have done for my child. The only other thing that we asked that they could not help us with was for an ILP, an individualized learning plan, where Mark could work at Mark's own pace, sort of like an independent study, and kind of self-teach math in the same way that the online math class was was taught, because we discovered that that's what really fits Mark's learning style for math best. I'm sure that the administration at West would have helped us with that, but they couldn't because, as far as I know, there's no policy to allow for something like that for an individualized learning program. And that is why we're here today, to respectfully request the board to develop policy in line with the Every Student Succeeds Act, and the requirements that districts receiving Title I and Title II funds use those funds for the benefit of high ability learners, such as Mark and other children in the district, to provide for enrichment programs for enrichment, acceleration, curriculum compacting, dual or concurrent enrollment, and instruction tailored to their needs. We need flexible policies so that when the administration is faced with a request by the parents that is not part of that graduation requirements, the administration can help the parents and can better serve the students. That the students don't, that the administration does not feel constrained by policies that say that the schools must, but that the policies say the school may do things to accommodate the learning style and potential of the students. It's important that we have flexibility because we believe that education is not a one-size-fits-all. In line with our request, I took the liberty of putting together a packet of information dealing with gifted education, curriculum compacting, guidance from other states, and it's a lot, but I think you should find it interesting, and I'm hoping that you go through it and that you can see how beneficial it would be to implement policies and programs for children that are high ability learners. And I thank you so much for your time. If in this packet there's information from the National Association for Gifted Children in Washington, D.C., the Illinois Association for Gifted Children in Palatine, and different articles from different states. Also, my contact information, if you have any questions or if I could provide any more research, please email me or call me, and I would be happy to provide that. Thank you so much for everything, and so far, we are happy campers at West.
Thank you.
If you get 1 to 10, we'll give the administration.
Our last speaker that signed up for the evening is Carolyn Behrens.
Hello, I'm Caroline Behrens, and I'm a sophomore at Lincoln Way East. I wanted to say thank you to the Lincoln Way School Board and Dr. Tingley for approving lacrosse as an official sport. I started playing lacrosse several years ago through the Park District and fell in love with the game. Lacrosse has been life-changing for me. It's challenged me to work hard and taught me how to handle pressure, how to follow, and how to lead. It has given me the confidence to overcome any obstacle on and off the field. It's also allowed me to grow close with a really amazing and talented group of young ladies. I think one of the best things about Lincoln Way Lacrosse is that it's still an emerging sport, and it presents a great opportunity for students who want to become more involved and maybe try a sport for the first time. In fact, we had several players on our team last season who had never played lacrosse or any sport at Lincoln Way before, all of who, like me, now have a chance to earn a varsity letter for the sports we represent. Lacrosse is already a successful sport at Lincoln Way. We compete against the best schools from around the state. Both the boys and girls teams won games in the state playoffs last season, and we are great ambassadors for the district. Now, thanks to you, our programs have a chance to reach new heights and build on those winning ways. Women's lacrosse is the fastest growing sport at the college level, which means opportunities for scholarships and recruitment. Within this past year alone, several colleges have added lacrosse as a varsity sport, including the University of Chicago this past May. Just a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to be in a one-on-one conversation with Jenny Graff, the head coach of women's lacrosse at Cornell University. Her first question to me was, "What high school team do you play for?" And I proudly said Lincoln Way.
years ago, a little over 4 years ago, we had a vision to create a different type of programming for some of our students. We were fortunate enough at that time to have some space in the building, and we were able to put together a really great team who I'm going to introduce to you tonight and let them talk passionately about what they love. Tonight we have Jan Smith, Jan and Josh Kresge. Jan and John were our anchors as we started, along with Megan Wells, who's out on maternity leave. Last year we added Katie Cheehan, who cannot be here tonight. Kathy Malka is here as Megan's sub, just to hear a little bit about what's going on in the program. And also Morgan Alcozer. Morgan is a student attending our transition program, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about that program tonight.
Hi, I'm Jan Smith, and we are here, and we are very proud and excited to share information about our transition program. Our program consists of Lincoln Way High School students that have reached and that have met their high school requirements and have chosen to leave their home school and come to our transition program, our district transition program, which is based here at Central. They have come for the goal of preparing themselves for adult life. And adult life consists of a variety of things. We work on meaningful, hold on a sec, sorry. Our goal is to prepare students for meaningful work, independent living, and community participation through our program. Our students will learn through classroom instruction. We don't teach bell to bell though. We teach in different sessions that are relevant to our students. We also do job training within our school and then within our community. And we also have a lot of community-based experiences that help enrich our students' experiences here. In addition, we have different content areas. We have vocational training that basically takes part in school again and out of school. We work on independent living skills such as cooking, balancing our checkbooks, doing the wash, having the students learn how to maintain their clothes. We also have a variety of community connections, and this is a real important component of our program. And another important component is fitness and leisure.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk a little about our vocational training that we have at our school. I think it's awesome that before we started this program, when it was Jan Red at Central and West, and I was the vocational coordinator at East, we had different vocational sites that we worked at. So when we joined together, we were able to pool our jobs together. So what we try to do is train the students to be successful workers and employees after they exit from school. Either if that's in a paid community job or if that's in a workshop, we try to expose them to those different experiences out in the community. So we do this through many different ways. We try to teach them appropriate work habits, the soft skills of working with other people, how to apply for a job, how to get a job, interviewing skills, just those different types of soft skills and that make you a successful employee. I think the thing that makes our program different than other places is that we have so many in-school businesses. I know if you tour it today, you see that we have Green School Learn More. So there we are able to produce cards. We can put as many as 30 students in there at one time, and they're all working on a different project together and independently, which is awesome. We have an embroidery business where we can make different things for different occasions. We have a greenhouse here that we're able to utilize in the back of the school. So we do poinsettias in Christmas time, and then in this summer or spring we do a spring flower sale. And then whenever you use the bathroom and wash your hands here, that soap is filled by our students here as well. So we're able to do that. It's a great thing to work on their vocational skills here in school and kind of build upon those things when we get them out in the community. We also have training sites that we work on in the community as well that are non-paid. So we partnered with TJ Maxx, Silver Cross, and Alseth Nursery. and we're able to take larger groups of students, 8 students with a teacher and a job coach, and work in a group setting on different skills there. Those are non-paid sites, but it's a great way to expose them to vocational training out in the community. We also have great relationships with many different businesses throughout our district, where the students work with a job coach. Some do, and receive training with our ultimate goal to eventually lead them to independently working by themselves. We have many of our students in our program who work all by themselves, do not have any job coach with them, but it all starts with that job coach in the beginning. So it's really great that one of our focuses is vocational training. Every day the students focus on some part of vocational training, so it's a great asset resource that we try to focus on. We also focus on independent living, as Jan said, and with independent living we are trying to build upon their skills to make them successful after they leave. Some students have a goal of living on their own. Some students have a goal of maybe when they leave our transition program at 22, that they're going to stay at home. We just want them to be as independent as possible when they leave. So even if their child is going to live with them for the rest of their life, they know that when they leave there, that they can make lunch by themselves in the microwave and not burn the house down, or they can do the laundry by themselves and fold clothes while they're gone. If that's what they can do, if that's their goal, that's great. If they want to live on their own and balance a checkbook and learn how to live in an apartment, then that's what we work on too. So it's just meeting those individual goals with those students. So we shop every week in the community. They have many students have their own personal account that they balance and their money and keep track of all those things. We work on kitchen safety, community safety, all those different types of things. So we're trying to expose them to those things. We also try to focus on community connections. So we try to get them out in the community and expose them to different areas. We have partnered with St. Francis University and Lewis University. Through Lewis, we do a reading program with them, with their college students, so they get to be exposed to peers their age. St. Francis, we participate in some activities with their college students as well. We go to Operation Care Package in Manhattan, where we go there throughout the year and volunteer and help with the soldiers. We go to Encore Hanover Assisted Living in Tinley, where we can work on their social skills and interacting with elderly people. And then we do different special events throughout the year, just trying to get them familiar with different things they can access and resources that they can use when they leave here, so we can just expose them to that. We also connect them with Trinity and Cornerstone and the Department of Human Services. Those are agencies that once they do leave Lincoln Way, that can help them find employment, help them with finding maybe an apartment. So just exposing them, we bring those speakers in, we take them to visit those different areas, because once they do reach 22, unfortunately they have to leave, so we want to make them and their parents feel comfortable with those places. So those are the different areas that we focus on in terms of vocational training, independent living, and community connections.
A favorite time for everybody is our fitness and leisure. We are very fortunate that Body Tech allows us to work out at their facility without a charge. The kids really, really enjoy going. We have sign-ups. We go 4 days a week. One of our staff members, who was a former PE teacher, she has taken the students and has a training program for them. They work on lifting weights and there are other different goals and more fitness goals. She writes little fitness programs for them. So it's almost like each one has their own personal trainer, which is wonderful. We also, every day obviously, we cannot take 59 students to Body Tech. So when the students aren't going to Body Tech, you might see us around the building. We might walk around in the field house like adults can do. We also walk outside along the track. So we're trying to teach them that not only going to a fitness center or a health club, that you can still get exercise just by walking. We also try to incorporate leisure skills into our program because, as we know, it's not all work. We have to enjoy life. And so we take the students, we go bowling. We've gone on different events. We've gone for dance lessons at Fred Astaire. We've gone and done other different type of leisure activities that would help the kids, like yoga. We had Mary Kay Cosmetics come in and teach the the girls how to apply makeup and just a variety of things. We based all of our activities on interest of the students. You know, the students will say, hey, how about let's look into this, and then we make arrangements and we try to do it. Okay, and the next thing that is really a great component for our program is Joliet Junior College. Some of our students, currently we have 9 students out of the 59 that are attending classes at JJC. They might just be taking 1 or 2 classes. The students are responsible to decide what classes they're taking, and they're responsible for paying for the classes and attending the classes. We encourage them to use the STAR program, which is help for students with disabilities. And we will help them and talk to them. It's a team effort to try to get them to succeed at JJC. That concludes this part of our program, but we have one more important person here who's going to tell you about what she likes about our program, and this is Morgan Alcoger.
Here. Hello, my name is Morgan Kozer. What do I like about the transition program? I like to socialize and get to know a lot of new people. I work in the community. My first job that I had was the New Lenox Food Pantry. I stocked shelves and put food away and helped customers. My second job was the Village Hall of New Lenox. I was a clerical assistant. I set paper and file water bills, and I organized the concert tickets. What community connections do I like? I went to St. Francis. We go to St. Francis to eat lunch with the college, in the cafeteria and share with some college students. And we go to Lewis University. We go for the reading program. A college student makes different reading lessons for us each week. We practice our reading skills. Civil Cross. We go to Civil Cross to receive work training in the kitchen and cafeteria. Part of the job is rolling silverware and also preparing trays for cooking. We also clean the cafeteria. Thank you.
Morgan is going to give you a sample of our Greetings Galore and More. We work hard, the students work hard developing soft skills, creating those cards. Thank you, Morgan, you did great.
And moving along, financial presentation and discussion. We'll start with the fiscal year 2018 budget.
It's a privilege to be here tonight to present fiscal year 2018 budget. As I proceed through the presentation, feel free to stop me if you have questions, as tonight's presentation is meant to be an interactive process. Key points for tonight's presentation is, first off, all funds revenue is increasing by 3.49 or 3.5 million. Bring to your attention, you'll notice in the documents, our capital expenditure is increasing by 1.5 million as the district is committed to its 10-year capital renewal plan. Expenditures for all funds are increasing at 4.4, and this thing doesn't want to stay, but maybe we just forget about that. And or 4.1 million for all funds. Now, bring to your attention, as soon as we exclude the increase in capital expense, it really is increasing by 2.65% or 2.5 million. Estimated net surplus for all funds, 2.3 million. When you look at just operating funds, we're estimating a $3.3 million surplus, which is about 3.9%, well above the 3% goal the board has set. Estimated ending fund balance for all funds is up 18.313% or to 15.3 million, which this excludes an anticipated land sale of 4.6 million. When we include the 4.6 million, we're looking at an all fund surplus of almost $7 million, resulting in our estimated fund balance of 19.9 million or a 53% increase over the prior year. During the budget development process, it's based on the 5-year financial forecast that we presented in May, adjusted for our actual fiscal year 17 results, also for our actual staffing plan is developed by Human Resources, principal input, and then, of course, I mentioned fully funding the current capital improvement plan. For revenue, and I see that's hard to read, apologize. As I mentioned, for all funds, local revenue is estimated to increase at just over 4% over the prior years. This is mainly due to the proposed increase in taxes and our estimated new growth in property. State funding is projected to decline at 5.7% due to the district shift from the basic formula grant, which now may be outlawed and we're in the process of new laws, but to the alternate formula. I will just note at this point the proposed, what appears to be if the governor signs into law, the new formula looks like will provide some additional funding for us. So, and then finally, federal funding is estimated to be.
Do you know how much that would be?
Yes, there's a little out there on the limb, but I'll go ahead and say it looks like the early estimations we have is about 500,000 more than we were anticipating. So, but we've yet to have that reconfirmed by ISBE, as they've been a little overwhelmed with all the amends here and adjust that. And so, but that's what the latest. And then basically federal funding we're estimating to be about the same as last year. So total funds, $104,230,000. This is a graphic representation of that previous data. As you can see, local revenue is where our increase is coming. This is a pie chart of the district's 2018 budget. And as you can see, the district is very dependent on local property taxes, which represent 78% of the district's revenue, which in many aspects is a very positive attribute given the state of Illinois. An additional 13% of the revenue is from other local sources such as student fees, rental income, and etc. Finally, state and federal government provide just over 5% of the total funds for the district. The district levies two types of property taxes. The operating levy, which is capped by PTEL, or the Property Tax Extension Limit Law, and the debt service, which is not tax capped. Debt service tax levy is passed as part of the bond referendum and is automatically levied unless abated by the Board of Education. As I mentioned, PTEL limits the increase that we can raise on our operating tax levy to the lesser of 5% or the consumer price index as of the prior December for the taxing year, plus tax the marginal tax rate on new growth. Displayed here is the CPI for the last several years. For example, the 2017, I'm going to try to push this right there. The 2017 CPI that will govern the 2017 tax levy is 2.1%, as shown here on this graph. While the proposed tax levy is based on $100 million, which was in the packets tonight, we're estimating high, so to make sure that all new property tax is taxed at the marginal tax rate. However, for the budget, we want to make sure that we hit our estimated revenues. So we're estimating 68 million in new growth, and that is what's built into the budget. The blue lines or further out lines are what we've projected out into the future. The district's property tax base will continue to recover, as we estimated about 4.27% based on reassessment for 2017, bringing our equalized assessment values to almost $4 billion for the year 2017. Overall, the tax rate is projected to decline slightly based on existing home values increasing. The yellow lines, or orange, are the cap tax, and the green line is the debt service. For other local revenue, corporate personal property tax, we're estimating to be down about $535,000 or 14%. We've adjusted student fees for the new athletic and activity fee, and then all other local revenue is estimated based on our actual results from 2017. State and federal revenue, as I mentioned earlier, we're anticipating that the GSA under the old formula was declining. Now, from the time I made this PowerPoint till tonight, we're having changes in that possibly. So we'll have to continue to watch that to see exactly where. We'll have an update for the September meeting. We're looking at budgeting for 4 categorical grant payments. Early word is that possibly a good chunk of those mandatory categorical payments may be rolled in to the new budget formula. So if that's the case, we're expecting those payments to come bi-monthly, which will be a very positive thing for the district. Finally, the federal Title I allocation, we're expecting that to be down by $123,000. When you look at the Ed Fund, you'll notice it mirrors all funds because it's the single largest fund for the district and counts for 61% of the district's resources. As mentioned, and as you would expect, revenue for local is projected to increase by 3.9% or $2.7 million. State and federal, state down a little and federal basically flat at this time. I apologize for how these slides are showing up here, but this is for the O&M fund. The O&M fund local resources are increasing by 11% or $1 million due to 2 factors. One, the general tax levy is increasing as we're working to bring that fund to be able to pay off its loan to the Ed Fund. And 2, allocating more taxes, allocating more taxes to make sure we pay off the interfund loans. And then finally, we're recommending no GSA be recorded to this fund. In the prior year, there was. Transportation, local revenue is declining by 7.5% or $740,000 due to the change in the tax allocation, since this fund has been running a positive fund balance and has been running a surplus in the past. State funding is increasing at 21% or $195,000 due to the fact that we're estimating 4 actual transportation payments, 2 from the prior year and 2 for the current year, so 4 total. Expenditures. Total expenditures for all funds are estimated to increase by 4.14% or $4 million. Of special note is the 110% increase in capital expenditures as the district works to provide full funding for its current capital renewal plan. This draft provides a quick overview of all expenditures by the object type. You'll note here salaries and benefits are our largest expenditures. This is a graphical display of the 2018 budget by expenditure type, object type, which you can see salaries and benefits represent 61% of our all funds expenditures. Bond payments and special ed tuition represent another 20% within the budget, and the remaining 19% is for professional services, supplies, capital, and non-capital expenditures. All salary and benefit assumptions are based on actual staff individual contracts and adjusted for the known retirements. Based on current staffing and the all aforementioned salary and benefit assumptions, the district is expecting salaries and benefits to increase by 1.22% overall, or $754,000 for the year. This graph represents the last 6 years' actual expenditures with the projected 2018 budget. As you can see from this graph, expenditures have been declining over the past 3 years, but are budgeted to increase in the current fiscal year 18. This is mainly due to the $1.5 million increase in capital expenditures, $350,000 increase in non-capital, and the $754,000 increase in salaries and benefits. The educational education fund expenditures mirror, as you would expect, pretty close to the all fund summary, as it is again the district's largest fund. As you know, about 94% of the increase. But only has a 0.94% increase over the prior year, or $587,000. While salaries and benefits are up about $492,000, and the remaining objects make up the rest of the amount. Operation and maintenance expenditures are up 4.4%, or $360,000. Salaries and benefits are basically flat due to shifting staff, etc., while other items have small increase like natural gas and some other supplies. Transportation overall expenditures are up 12.5%, or $1.1 million, due to increase in bus lease payments, prior year decline in fuel costs, so our fuel cost was lower. Now we're not sure that's going to continue, so we have a little increase in there. And finally, $252,000 increase in salaries and benefits. The all funds surplus is estimated to be $2.3 million, bringing our ending fund balance to $15.3 million, or an 18% increase over the prior year. Operating surplus, as mentioned, is expected to be $3.3 million, bringing our overall operating ending fund balance to about $3 million, resulting in an estimated 3.6% of expenditures. You know, our goal, long-term goal, is to reach 33%. We have not budgeted for the proposed land sale. However, we anticipate this land sale to go through. When it does, we're anticipating about $4.6 million, which will bring all fund surplus to $6.9 million, which will bring our estimated ending fund balance to about $20 million, or a 53% increase over from the prior. Finally, to summarize, these are exciting times for the district financially, as we are firmly on a road to financial recovery. And with that, I would open it up for questions on the budget.
So I guess I'm going to start with the process here. So at a kind of a higher level, can you just go over, I know you kind of gave us an outline with a lot of the Q&A responses that we got back. I think at a high level we can skip past the staffing part. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But then get into kind of the operational units and exactly what was done this year and what might have been done a little bit differently this year than in years past in setting the budget for those operational items. in the ed fund, O&M, transportation.
Right, okay. You know, I will answer that to the best of my ability. Not being here in years past, but in speaking with staff, you know, trying to understand the process of what was done in years past, I think it would probably be safe to say, I think it's more of a little bit top-down budgeting in prior administrations. With Kelly's help, not with Kelly's help, mostly Kelly's help, I would, you know, Kelly put in a lot of effort. First thing we did was to sit down and to come up with a allocation for the schools. And so to bring some equity across the schools and say, okay, so on a per pupil basis, we then give them an allocation and ask them to go back and to take that allocation and to look at their needs and then to budget that funds to meet those needs. So that'd be the first thing. So the building principals, the departments were very much involved in the process this year. And then as far as like O&M, of course, Kelly met with Rich and with transportation with Mike and going over them and going over each line item of the budget and really working through it and saying, okay, so, you know, take transportation, for example. I know Kelly was back and forth with Mike several times. Okay, what about fuel? You know, he's, you know, fuel was low this year, but we don't, who knows the prices, and work through the process. So really looking at what's the needs, what do we need to do to run this district, and not just looking at the line item and saying, well, we had X in there last year, we need X in there this year. So they really took and went through line by line, looking at those things and getting things budgeted appropriately. The other thing we really looked at, and I mentioned in the memo, is trying to put things in the categories according to the Illinois Program Accounting Manual. So that's caused some, you know, difficulties in the reporting. We're trying to compare year to year, but that will get better in future years as we tighten that up and get things lined up in the categories.
Can you, so how did you come up with this $180 figure per student that you're allocating for non-staff funding? And what does that cover? I mean, non-staff funding, is that everything else in the budget? Or?
Well, it's everything else. Okay, so how did we come up with that? So we sat down, we looked at, you know, okay, what kind of needs that they had in years past. We also knew we were pushing expenditures in from the student activity funds. And so Kelly and I crunched that out, looked through it, compared it, you know, other districts too, and said, okay, this seems to be a fair number, especially bringing some equity across from the different buildings. And then we worked with them, with the buildings to say, okay, now look at what it is you need. So this is going to cover all the things that's not attached to their building. So O&M is really, you know, in charge of if it's attached to the wall or it's part of the building, they're in charge of that. But this is all those other things that that building is going to need for different supplies. Could be the copy paper to the, you know, whatever, throughout their building. We gave them very much decentralized budgeting for them to put that in the areas they need to make sure that the students have what they need at that building.
So that would be departmental budgets, athletic budgets, activity budgets, what they would need to operate each school. Well, with that in mind, what's driving, for example, the supply budget up 8% if we have declining enrollment?
Right. First off, I think the first thing I want to just discuss really quickly on, you know, as enrollment is declining, you have to understand that, you know, really it takes 300, 400, or whatever, 500 kids out of a building to really make enough of a difference in a building to have some change in actual expenditures. I think we have seen some, well, I think when we look at the numbers, we have some lowering at east, increasing at west, you know, but we're talking 60 kids there, 40 kids, you know, that's not enough kids to really impact the budget. Because it's just, when it comes down to the number of sectioning, the different things they need to run the building, it really is going to have a minor impact of the enrollment. But now let's just talk as long, you know, as long as we're on supplies, let's talk, because that's, you know, like, that's a big number. So in the Q&A, You know, and I will add this page to our document in future. So I put in there an operating fund summary, and so I think that really kind of helps because it is, you know, that's in one of the attachments, so it should be towards the back of that information. But you know, we kind of have to set the capital off to the side, and same way with our debt service, because you know that's non-operating expenditures in a sense. You know, capital renewal, if we don't do it now, we're going to pay for it later. It very much needs to be kind of set over there as a thing. But if you look at this operating surplus or operating funds, that's really where I want to focus in, because this is what we're spending the ongoing operations of the district. So if you look at that there, you can see, you're like, wow, okay, supplies, 6.5 million actual last year, budgeted 7.1 million. Okay. What's up there? So if you jump into that, so I did a little analysis on that because that's a very valid question. So supplies, really to boil this down, you've got to jump into the details of that. And so where you want to do then is look at that and say, okay, where is that increase coming from? And I apologize, there's not some page numbers on some of this analysis I did. But so it's under question Q&A under supplies and equipment. So all funds were up 574,000. The ed fund 307, O&M 112, and transportation 128. Now we can begin to break that down and get some clarity on what's driving this. So let's look at ed funds. Well, for ed funds, that's the greatest one. That's actually a great celebration. $307,000 increase, and most business managers might not be celebrating on that, but I'll tell you, it's a celebration because what it's providing is providing for an increase in textbooks. So we attached an additional thing that Mr. Riley put together where we're showing we have some textbooks 20 years old needing to be addressed. So we've got $150,000 in textbooks. We had needed teacher laptops, so we're adding teacher laptops. And then also, I'm sorry here, and then just little bits to do with shifting of those expenditures from student activities over here. But really, that is a celebration, what we're able to do here with this 307,000. We're able to provide this update in our curriculum. Finally, O&M. Well, what's the increase there? 112,000. Well, most of that increase is we're concerned natural gas has been an all-time low, and we're anticipating that that might not continue, so we needed to make sure we had enough funds in there to heat our buildings. 112,000, very reasonable. And then finally, and then 128,000 increase in transportation. Okay, what is all that about? Well, we're looking at increased cost for some repair parts, tolls, bus fuel. They said, Kelly and Mike were back and forth many times on, well, what is the right number for bus fuel? And then finally, utilities. We've not accounted for some utilities down there before, and we are, about 40,000. So we needed to account for them and fund 40. So I hope that answers your question. But when you see this big number there, it's like, it just seems unreasonable. But then when we can break down the details for you and you can see what this increase is actually going for, you see it's very much a reasonable increase, and we're glad to do that.
Well, certainly, that wasn't my intent. I wasn't suggesting that it was unreasonable, but like you say, we're still a district borrowing 27 million, so we got to look at where I see these big increases and see exactly where that money is going, because, you know, for lack of a better term, we're scratching for pennies here any way we can.
Absolutely, I feel that as same responsibility.
So backing up a little bit back to a higher level,
Mm-hmm.
the budget that was prepared under the education fund, where you're breaking out expenditures, you know, in this, you know, a number of categories that, you know, we hadn't seen before, like you have the athletics and regular ed, special ed, vocational ed, interscholastic, summer school, all of that. If we weren't tracking that in fiscal year 2017 in these categories specifically, how are we coming up with the actual number in 2017?
Great, so, as we mentioned, you know, now when you break down the ed fund budget, salaries are more like 80% of the cost, okay? So in the big slide, I said, hey, you know, salaries are 61%. Well, you gotta realize, okay, so now we got 20% debt service, blah, blah. But when you're looking just at the ed fund, we're talking almost 80% of our expenditures are salaries and benefits. So first thing we did is going through the staffing plan with HR, we made sure based on where those staff members were assigned, we went through that line by line, person by person, and making sure that every one of those individuals were assigned to the correct program. Once we had them assigned to the correct program, then we let the computer take over, spit it out, and we come up with our salaries and benefits. Now on the supplies and purchases side, we worked with the departments and said, okay, what is it, so what were you budgeting before? So we knew what their, when they tell us what their needs are, we looked at that and we crosswalked it across, if you will. So like, let's just use an example. Driver's ed behind the wheel. Okay, well, that wasn't being charged the right program, but we know what they need in expenditures. They told us what they needed. We crosswalked that across then to the right program. So, and I'm just gonna tell you right up, we're not gonna be perfect this first year out. We will still be making corrections and getting things honed down. I think I said in my memo, 2 to 3 years, you know, to get things where you're gonna look at it and go, okay, that really seems consistent from year to year. But our goal is consistency from year to year according to the program with county manual.
And so taking like a step further, like, so looking at interscholastics, and we're now charging an activity fee. We've talked about, you know, making sure that we understand what costs are going into those programs. Is there, you know, we see a very high level breakout here. I mean, are we breaking this out by, you know, sport, you know, school, everything like that, so we can see where our costs are and have a very good feel for that, so we can kind of make some more decisions around the athletic programs going forward?
Right, so where we're at right now with that is we're breaking that down by athletics, by school. Now we'll have program codes that we can eventually then break it down by, you know, football, you know, basketball, whatever. So, but we're going to let our, what they call job codes will be what breaks that down. We're not going to break it clear down to that level on the general ledger, most likely. We'll be using a program code to get down there for that. And we already have heads up working on, know that's one of the things the board would like is a detailed report this year of what our athletic costs are, so we're well got the brains thinking on that.
So on the, you know, you gave the current balances going into the year at the all funds level. What are they at the operating funds level?
Yeah, well, the operating, you're talking about what we're estimating for surplus or ending
No,
fund?
I'm talking about what are we coming into the year with as a fund balance?
Okay, so for operating funds, we're actually coming in the year with a negative fund balance, 256,000 negative. We're estimating we'll end the year with a $3.3 million surplus. Now that's excluding any land sales. We're talking about just operation, sustained operation. And that will bring our fund balance to just over $3 million, or about a 3.6% of expenditures. And as I mentioned, you know, the goal is 33%. So we got a ways to go, but if the land sales goes through and the other stuff, we're going to make some tremendous progress this year towards that goal.
So the numbers that you were giving earlier with the fund balances at 13 million, that's all restricted funds in debt services and capital projects.
Correct, yes. And we're anticipate that to go to about, with land sales, to about 20 million. But you're right, it's got that restricted funds, debt service and capital.
So the 1.5 million increase we were talking about for capital projects is coming out of those restricted funds, not out of the operating funds.
That is correct.
So that's why I think it's important, and I know you're going to close this night and appreciate this, but like I asked for on the financials, I think we have to have in our budget too the breakout, if which we now have in this packet, but the operating funds.
Right.
Because, I mean, that's what we can kind of control.
Yeah, you know, in the budget book, we put in there that one-page summary. It showed, you know, operating and then the restricted. But, you know, really after I got some questions on it, then I started looking at that. It just made sense. So we put together this other page, and we're going to make that a permanent part of the budget book going forward, because it makes sense to have this just operating. It helps us to see, you know, what ongoing operations are.
I'm ready to move on to revenue. Anyone else has
Yeah.
higher level?
I'll start with revenue, unless anybody else want to go to revenue. Okay. This fiscal year, for 2018, for the local taxes, the 94,567,500. That includes 800. I'm assuming that includes the roughly 800,000 that's coming from Will County that was late that we should have received in fiscal year 2017. Does this also assume that, or are we assuming that that doesn't happen again next year? Or this coming fiscal year? Because quite honestly, what concerns me of the overall revenue is, if that happens again, if they're late with another 800,000 come next May or June, coupled with maybe we only get 3 of these 4 categoricals, well, all of a sudden our revenue is down, you know, 1.6, 1.7 million. And I know it's going to come eventually, but strictly if we're looking at a fiscal year, all of a sudden our operating surplus is dwindled quite significantly. I know it's a timing issue, but
Right.
past performance is indicative of what's going to happen in the future. I just don't have much confidence in our state. Hopefully this was a one-time thing with the county, that doesn't become the norm. But we could also get 6 categoricals this year. They could catch up and give us all 4, who knows? But
Right, and they did
I'd rather
that.
plan for the worst than hope for the best.
Right, and you know, they did that, you know, in prior year. But, yeah, so in this budget, we are anticipating to only collect the average of what we normally collect at the 2017 tax levy, which would be about 51%. It does include collecting the rest of the 2016, which you indicated is additional funds from what we would have, because we should have had more funds last year. So, you know, I guess my only comment with that is we're at a 3.9% operating surplus, which our goal, our long-term goal, is 3% every year until we reach 33%. I think it's important to note that it's going to take a little while, as we've all said, it's going to take a while to get up to 33%. What we can't do is we can't sacrifice our current students' experience by trying to, you know, push really hard to get to that 33%. So we have slack in there. If revenue wasn't exactly where we thought it would be, we've got that almost 1% that we could still come in with a 3% surplus. And if we need, we can always look at expenditures mid-year to make any adjustments if we had to do something like that. Say there really is some major things happening with the funding. But it actually appears the state could possibly be on a good turn in the corner, and you know, possibly could be on a new road. So
I would almost think we might be a little too conservative on the revenue side. The local revenue is fine, but I mean on the state side, I mean isn't part of what was approved that, you know, it's hold harmless, so it won't go down. In 2017, how many categoricals have you received in this actual number? 3?
Yes, 1 from the previous and then 2. 1 from the
Right.
previous and then 2 in the current. So there are 2 plus 4 this year. Correct.
Right, so 3, yeah. So if we're budgeting for 4, and there's a hold harmless on the, I know it's not in here yet, and you said, I mean, how much, I know you, I'm not asking you to go out on a limb, but, so just, you can just answer my, if we have 4 categoricals, and we have hold harmless, the general state aid does not go down, what would our state revenue be? You know, we currently are budgeting 7.9 million. What would that get us to?
Well, okay, so let's,
And then I'm gonna add in the 500,000 you added.
yeah. Okay, so let's kind of take this question a little bit at a time. So first off, hold harmless. So it's very unclear at this moment exactly, I've heard everything from the hold harmless is going to be a hold harmless per pupil. I've also heard that the hold harmless is going to be exactly from your 2017, and every district will not get less than the 2017 allocation. Now, what's also a little...
So let's assume that.
Okay, let's assume that. All right. So, now the other thing that's a little vague about the hold harmless, which they haven't specified, is the new funding formula, as I alluded to at the beginning, is kind of a hybrid. So they're taking the old general state aid and special education aid and rolling those into an adequacy formula. Okay. What we're unsure is, are they going to hold us harmless on both of those numbers or just on the old GSA numbers? That is very unclear at this moment. The old, what we used to call MCATs, which was special ed, driver's education, transportation, okay, that's going to be replaced with just a strict transportation kind of grant. That, no, I don't think there's any hold harmless on that at all. They never have, so I doubt it. Now remember, we also had almost $500,000 hold harmless in our 17 funding. So they're not going to hold us harmless for the harmless, so that's out. So now we're about 4.5 million on GSA. So we could expect, and you know in this budget we got 3.9. So, and the new formula could potentially give us 500,000 more. So best case scenario, we should be back at about that 5 million range. So.
So, best case scenario, what is this 7.9 million that we have in the budget?
I think it could be another $1 million is what. But best, absolutely best case scenario, but I think more realistic, if we get the 500,000, that's probably more where we're at.
How soon do we expect that to come into focus?
You know, the alert came out today that basically, I think it was a back off and stop calling. It basically said we need to give ISBE plenty of room for them to finish the calculations and not to expect anything right away. Now in that same alert, they did say we may see some kind of a state aid payment. I don't know what the heck they're going to base this on, but they thought by September 10th we could see some kind of a state aid payment of some type.
So
we're not sure then?
Yeah.
So in the local revenue for the property taxes, is the assumption 50.3% of fiscal year 2016's levy plus 49% of what we estimated for the fiscal year 17 levy, which at that 81.1 million?
Yeah. So, I'm sorry.
No, that's, I didn't, you have time to think about it.
No,
I was
I'm sorry.
just,
What's
I
the
was
question?
just, so where I got the 50.3.
Right.
Is off of your.
That's exactly
this
right.
year. And then so what I'm trying to figure out is the second half of it. So, I'm assuming that's, since we're using, you gave us the budget levy earlier in your presentation, that we used 81.1 million. So you're taking 49% of that, which is basically what we're saying is what we typically receive. Is that how that was calculated?
Yeah, so we typically should have received, well, I'm sorry. So you know you collect taxes, 2 tax levies over 1 fiscal year. So we typically, so beginning into fiscal year 18, we're gonna collect the rest of 2016, which normally would have been about 49%. But Will was late on getting us taxes for the prior year, so we're actually going to be getting about 50.33%. So just over the 49. Now, what we expect to get out of the 2017 tax levy is the normal average, which is 51%. So some people call that the early taxes. I don't know how you want to refer to it, but you know, there's prior year, which would be 16. We're going to collect the rest of that, 50.3%. And then out of the 2017 levy, we're expecting to collect 51%. That's a real wild card. That means it's, on average, we've collected 51%. We're on the cash basis here, so we'll record whatever it actually comes to us. But the 2016, that's a known number. We will collect the remaining 2016. No wild card there.
So I think to keep it in perspective, because of this cash balance, cash basis accounting, because there's that carryover, it's $1 million in revenue that we're expecting, that we're moving into the 2018 budget that normally we would have expected to collect in 17.
That is accurate, yes.
So, quick question about cash flow. As far as our estimate of up to 27 million in tax anticipation warrants, you said that depends on getting all 4 mandatory categoricals GSA payments. And it says land sales completed by January 1st, 2018.
Correct.
Maybe bring Scott into this a little bit. Are we gonna jump ahead to number 3? Oh.
Are we done with the budget?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I did.
Fine with me.
My bad. All right. So,
Any more budget questions?
I had a question about the EAV.
Okay.
You're projecting, I think you said 4%.
4.27.
And where did you come up with that number?
Based on last year's actual EAV adjustment. I'm sorry, I'm just clicking through these like crazy. So last year's reassessment was 4.27. The economy is still robust. I would expect it's a good estimate. You know, if we were seeing changing economic conditions, I'd say, well, we better start without any kind of other economic change or known change, using the prior year's actual, reasonable. All we're doing with that number is calculating our estimated tax rate. So it's based on prior year's actual for a reassessment.
When you say prior years, you're basically just talking 2 years?
No, so it's based on the 2016 EAV that was used when setting that levy.
So when we're looking at that graph, going just back a few years, it was declining. It's really only coming up within the past 2 years.
Right. But so if you look at 16 there, see our EAV going up, so that was, reassessment was 4.27, and we had new growth of 60 million, I believe. Well, I got that. I think we have it right.
Yeah, you have the new growth.
Yeah, new growth, 62 million.
Right.
So, you know, when you're looking at that other chart, realize that's a $4 billion chart, so it takes a lot of movement to move that chart.
So on the expense side, the salaries and transportation, which we're going up $200,000 plus, which was like a 6% increase. I didn't know, I thought we should probably get an explanation for what's going on there.
Yeah. So So when working through with transportation, a good chunk of transportation's expenditures are non-contractual, meaning they're based on what we're gonna need for athletic field trips, academic field trips, shuttles to and from, what the elementaries may ask for in field trips and shuttles and et cetera. So the salaries, contractual salaries are not increasing at that. But when we have to build in the line item for, you know, the extra route cost, which is almost half of their total salaries, you know, you build in what you think, okay, well, here's the maximum that we could expect. We won't expend any more there than the buildings need or authorize, but when we're budgeting, we put in the line item there to cover us.
So why would we, I mean, we have fiscal 16 in front of us too, and that's, 4 million. Just seems, I don't know, 6% seems like a big contingency in salaries. But that, I understand what you're.
Right, I mean, you know, so, so when we built out the budget, you know, we budgeted the actual salaries for those individuals. And then we took a look at, we said, okay, what did, now the other thing to remember, some of this will be billed back to elementary districts too. So we had to look at it and say, okay, what's noonday runs gonna cost? Well, so we look at what that cost is. What's athletics? What's field trips? What's, you know, and so we estimate those to the best of our ability. So it could definitely possibly be a little high, but it's, you know, it's our best estimate based on the information we have, and realizing some of that, a good chunk of that is billed back to our feeder districts, based on what they request.
And then on the professional services and busing, where the significant increase, and we said, earlier you said the transportation, it was the leases. Really, this is the lease that was supposed to be paid in 17, that was actually paid in 16. The bus lease is driving probably a big piece of this increase.
I will have to, basically,
Yeah, because when we just approved bus leases, I don't know, a meeting or two ago, they decreased.
Right.
So this to me looks like, and this is a big number, 612, because when I look at our operations right now, and the increase is 2.6% overall in operating expenditures, that's about 1.4 million. 600,000 of this is something I think we've all known, but this was because when you don't have a good comparison to fiscal 2017 because the payment wasn't made then. So I don't think that's an increase in the bus leases per se, like year to year. I think it was just one was prepaid.
Yes.
So I think that makes the numbers look, that's why hopefully we're still looking to move off cash basis accounting at some point.
Right, so, right, I see what you're saying. So the number in 2017 is artificially low because of paying some later. And so then our increase, so we have a higher number, because we paid some of the leases we had to pay from the prior, plus the remaining payments we have to make for this year.
And salaries, the teacher salaries, the contract, I think this year is for an increase of 2.5%, is that correct? 2%. So, it's significantly lower than that because of the retirements, correct?
Correct.
So, my thing is, when we have to kind of look at this from, at least from my perspective, you're looking at salary and benefits, which are kind of set in the operating funds, and then you look at, everything else, and it goes up about 6.7%. Now, we've given some of the justifications for that, and I think they're all very valid. But I think it would be helpful if we, instead of just like, well, it's this or it's that, I mean, I think we made a decision to spend $300,000 on repaving, the lots, transportation, all the schools, and it's something that has to be done on a continual basis. But that's something that's kind of showing up in that 6.74% increase. The computers, my recollection from when we did the laptops was there was going to be an increase for that, but then the budget, the number I recall was $880,000 for technology. It was going to stay flat, but we're saying there's an increase for technology of 100 and some thousand. I'm perfectly fine because I think we've made these decisions. I mean, what was another one? Laptops. I mean, those things add up, right? I just gave you over 500,000. I think if you reverse the bus lease or the buses out of there, you're moving that number down significantly. But I think we should see that number. And these are the decisions you made, and that is why what we're investing in to have that increase in this budget. Some of it, I think, is artificially inflated again because of 2017. But I think that would just be helpful before we're going in to approve the budget to kind of recall those decisions.
So you're looking for like a footnote at the bottom?
I don't need a footnote. I just need,
Text,
summary.
textbooks.
Yeah.
Roof repairs.
Right. Those are all. Well, the roof repairs aren't. I'm not talking.
So
about
you're talking operating only?
I'm talking about strictly. I'm keeping it to the operations.
Okay, operations
I mean,
only.
we know what you did on the capital side, capital office side. I'm just saying, right? I'm just saying we're increasing our expenditures outside of salaries and everything by 1.4 million. What are we getting for that? And I think you have to show that, right? I mean, we already spent the money on the pavement. That's $300,000. But that's something that was getting deferred maintenance. Those things are all fine. We have to get it to a sustainable budget. But I think, just coming in and saying, okay, it was kind of this and that. I just want to, these are the decisions that we're making so that everyone recalls it and it's kind of in the public record.
Okay, so we'll put together a summary sheet for the operating funds for next meeting, kind of just line itemed up for your review.
I have one last question. So last year we were using the contingency accounts, and this year we're not going to use the contingency accounts. So it's just, what's the rationale for that?
I think it just boils down to a budgeting philosophy between, how administration wants to deal with that this year. I personally, I'm the one that made the recommendation to discontinue contingencies. It really kind of introduces a whole new decision-making process, if you will. When you have contingencies in the budget, then I think the kind of unspoken expectation is that there's going to be any kind of expenditures of those contingencies. You're going to come back to the board, we're going to talk about that, blah, blah, So the bottom line of it is administration here is committed to live within this budget. We're not asking to give allowance to come back and say, well, no. We'll make whatever necessary adjustments to live within this budget we're presenting. We need to come in with at least a 3% surplus, excluding of that land sales. That land sales is really just a blessing, to the district. We're going to move ahead and have at least a 3% operating for us. And so we're going to live within that budget.
And now would you like to move on to the levy?
No, I mean, cash.
Yeah. What was that?
Levy's
Levy's
next.
next.
I tried to go to cash, but you guys all stopped because we had to do levy first.
Okay, so just give me 2 seconds. so at the last meeting when we were discussing the tax levy, really the main thing we wanted to bring up and discuss, I couldn't bring up the PowerPoint if you'd like, but really the question that was asked at the prior meeting was, okay, you're anticipating, or you have a tax levy determination which has 100 million of new growth, and in the budget you have a budget tax levy of 68 million. When we see those numbers, and I apologize for not having them with me in the last meeting, so they are provided. There's a overview for you there, and then just the worksheets. So I apologize, I don't recall who brought up the question, but I would just answer any questions you may have. So you're going to have two sheets there. They're both are going to be labeled tax levy determination. You're going to know the difference by the very second to last line. It's going to have new growth. One will have new growth of 68 million, and the other one will have new growth of 100 million. That's the difference between going to be the certified levy that we request that the board approve at September 21st versus the levy that's built into the budget.
And again, just to recap, the reason that we do that is because if it's over what we asked for, then we're out that money. So we shoot way high on that.
Correct. New growth is unknown at this time. We've talked with the county assessors, or township assessors, excuse me. At this point, they're really just wrapped up last assessing season. They're just getting started. They're not prepared to give any indication. And so, we had 62 million of new growth last year. We're anticipating an increase in that. Our best guess is about 68 million. We asked for more than that because this is a one-time opportunity. If you do not, and you underestimate that number, then in a sense, that new growth is not taxed at your marginal tax rate, and it will never be taxed. It's gone. So we shoot high. We would never want to not tax at that marginal tax rate for the new property.
But the reason we have to go out with the levy before, we can even get a good estimate from the county is because we have to get the tax anticipation warrant process started. So that's why we're trying to make sure that we capture all the tax revenue possible.
Absolutely.
So the levy will look probably, if it $500,000 more than what we would project is going to happen. Is that correct?
Right. I mean, if you look at
81.6 to 81.1.
Right. If you look at the 68 million, that is more like what you're going to expect to see the tax levy looking at. So, looking at 81.1 million in overall total revenue, 64.9 million will be operating tax levy.
And I know you said because the township assessors weren't of much help to you yet. What factors did you use in determining the 10% growth in new construction, approximately?
That 68 million we're estimating for new growth. We developed that during the 5CAS development process. It's really just based on the reasonable look at what would transpired historically and with the building coming back. Now, what I do want to emphasize is when you look at it, this is 68 million of new growth. So, yeah, so in some ways I should use a stack graph, or I don't know what would be an appropriate graph, but just because we had 62 million of new growth last year, it's not, we're 68 million, that's new homes. Now there are plenty of new subdivisions, areas to be built in, so it's not like we're sitting in a landlocked district with no opportunity. So.
No, certainly. Well, the only thing I might suggest would be, and I when I was trying to gather information on this a little bit last year. If you call the villages, they could probably give you at least an idea of housing starts or occupancy permits year over year to date.
Right.
That may or may not be helpful in tightening up that number. Maybe might even be better than 10%. I'm not sure. I haven't asked this year.
Yeah, you know, we can certainly, I can take a look at that. The other thing and I apologize, I don't have it here with me, but I wish I had my sensitivity analysis, because I believe, Ray, you know, for each $1 million of new growth, I think it's like $23,000 change in revenue. So, right, so, you know, I kind of put my effort into, you know, I mean, this is a good, solid estimate based on prior history, you know, and, you know, but I could certainly take a look at what other offers we have for re-estimating.
Well, I think in 2017, we estimated for 40 or 50, and obviously we came up ahead.
Yeah, in 2016, I think I saw some things where I thought it was either 454 million, if I recall correctly. What the estimate I think was, and it actually was a little above that.
Okay, anything else before we move on to cash flow? Okay, cash flow.
Okay. So provided at your desk this evening was a cash flow developed by administration. We've been working with PMA to complete a more detailed binder, if you will. I've used them in my prior district. It's, you know, well, anyway, the bottom line is it's not ready. So administration has been working on their own cash flow, which I'm grateful for that, because we're prepared and ready, because we need to discuss it tonight. So at some future meeting, we may or may not be providing the kind of thick binder, all the fancy graphs. This is just very straightforward, but covers the information that we need to project our cash flow on a daily basis. So we here in this district need to have a daily cash flow projection because we need to know at any given time, on any given day, what we feel like our cash flow is going to be. So in your information here, it's provided, and there's a little color code at the bottom. If it's not self-explanatory, I color coded it for you. So bright yellow is actual cash balances. Blue is estimated cash balances. Kind of what I guess it's orange, you know, kind of whatever color orange is our tax anticipation warrant repayments. And then finally, green is our tax anticipation draws. So you can see by this day-by-day cash flow by fund, and remember, you know, we have, so if you look at I'm looking at the very first page of the actual cash flow. You know, we have the date, then description of what item it is we're processing, and then it's running across for the operating funds, education, O&M, transportation, etc., subtotaling on our operations. So that's our non-restricted funds. So those funds there are non-restricted. Then we have two columns at the far right, debt service and capital. They are separated and tracked, well, all funds are tracked individually, but those two are specifically because they're restricted funds and we can only use those for the described purpose. So you can see here by this cash flow, we're anticipating there is a complete draw schedule at the very end, summarized for you. But if you look at the very first place, we would need to be prepared for a draw on our TAWs is September 30th of $3 million. This will allow us to make sure that every fund stays positive throughout. And so it is in preparation for We will actually then be having some payoffs of the other ones and then be prepared to move forward with the rest of the fiscal year. So it's laid out there. The only thing I would really like to bring to attention, we will be coming at the September meeting also, besides a parameters resolution for our TAWs, we will also, we're going to be, by our prior resolution, be paying back our working cash. But it only makes sense that we borrow from ourselves first versus from a bank. So you're going to notice, if you look at November 19th, on that date, we will be looking to do a working cash loan back from working cash, $1 million to Ed Fund and $1 million to O&M. That will reduce the amount of borrowing that we need to do from the bank. Otherwise, the schedule is hopefully self-explanatory. And like I say, at the very end, there is a summarized schedule of draws. As you can see, based on the assumptions that we receive our general state aid and other categorical payments as historically expected, and also that we receive the sale of land by January 1st of 2018, we are anticipating needing $24 million. Now we're going to come to the board with a parameters resolution to ask for 27 because there are many things unknown and we want to be prepared if necessary if we had to draw more. We won't draw any than we need, and we'll only draw as we need and not anything else. So this schedule, we'll keep it updated. We'll update it every month for you, and we'll keep you posted on where we're at on anticipated draws or actual draws. And like I say, we will only draw on what is absolutely necessary.
So,
Go ahead.
so this is telling us you expect to draw $3 million September 30th, and there's enough time in there between the meeting and September 30th to get this done?
I expect there is. We'll have everything ready to roll. We're lining up financing now. There's a lot of work going ahead of this. We're not coming to the 21st meeting to say, let's start the process. We're coming to the 21st meeting to say, here's the finalized process. We would like the board to vote on that. You know, that's why we're here tonight to discuss it. We like to discuss things one meeting prior to coming and saying, okay, we need you to vote, but we will need a vote on the 21st, and we would be looking for support of the $27 million authorization.
So then we don't need anything until November. So we'll get tax revenue and we don't need anything until November.
Right.
The projection that we need 24 million in TAWs, does that account for, again, not paying into the insurance for a period of time? Is that factored into this, or is this saying we only at this time we only think we need 24 million?
We only need 24 million, and we plan to be current with all required expenditures, including making payments to our insurance fund. Now, those are relief valves that can be, like the 3 million we're asking, we think we need 24, we're asking for 27. That's a 3 million relief valve. We have other relief valves we could draw on if we need, but we don't want to if we don't have to. So this cash flow anticipates paying all those payments on a timely basis.
So that's
Chris, just to add to that quickly, we're in a position this year a little bit better, having run a surplus where we're able to get funding. The reason we had to do what we did last year was the insurance, is we simply couldn't borrow anymore at that time.
So are you going to go out and get the full commitment from a financial institution for the 27 million on September, right after September 21st?
Well, actually, we're already in discussions, So, like I said, we plan to kind of have this lined up and brought back as, you know, here's where, based on everything we can, you know, we're having multiple discussions. And so we'll bring back what we see as the best and then ask the board to support that. But it's,
Yeah, no, my question was, are you gonna bring back is the commitment gonna be for the total amount?
yes, for the 27 million. Because we want to have, even though we don't think we're going to need that, we want to have a firm commitment going in so we know where we're at, so that, you know, heavens be, state all of a sudden comes some landlocked and holds us hostage again with payments. You know, we need to be prepared for that.
So does it change anything to try and have it for 30 million?
Well,
25.
No, you need a margin of safety here, and
Yeah.
we're still
So-
having negative cash balance.
And see if you don't, not make an insurance payment. Like
so, you know,
Yeah.
so, you know, we're in financially a greater position than we have been, but we're still asking for 27 million. You know, we need to justify, I'll be going through this cash flow with prospective lenders. You know, we have to justify why it is we're asking for what we're asking. 30 million, I could not justify asking for 30 million, so, you know.
They have the cost of capital too, right?
Right. Because they are making a commitment to have that available if we need it, so they're wanting us to tighten up that number and be realistic with them too.
And are you looking at both fixed and variable?
Where our first choice is at fixed, you know, and also our first choice is, if possible, to lower issuing costs would be to engage with one lender. But if not possible, we may have multiple, but the cost of issuance is higher than that, so we'll be looking at those options.
And speaking of the lenders, are those typically banks? Or, I mean, last year I think we went to the municipality to borrow some money.
Right. So our first line of option is our relationship with the bank. And if not, then we also have, I might just mention, I received several letters this week from neighboring districts who say they're more than willing to step forward and buy our TIWs. So, you know, we have those. But it just gets, when you have $27 million, you know, to have $1 million here, $1 million there, $1 million here, you know, and just issuance costs. Well, unless we did it in one big roll-up where they could then bid in. I mean, there's options for that too, but, you know, we will exhaust all those as we come forward for the 21st meeting.
And I think we want to maybe consider trying to make this attractive to our feeder districts that feed into the high school if possible.
Right.
So that way the money is actually staying local, giving back in a sense. I mean, it's not maybe the correct term to use, but at least some of the feeder districts have an opportunity to help out their situations.
Right.
I assume since we have better standing this time, we won't have to escrow.
When you say escrow, you mean
So we had
direct?
to.
Automatic payments?
Yeah.
No.
That.
Actually, that's a very valuable bargaining chip for the district. I anticipate that that'll be one we will exchange for a better rate. So,
Didn't that cause us to have to borrow more last year?
Yeah, yes, it can.
So I mean, I think you have to do that, then we're gonna have to see that analysis.
Sure.
Of what you're trading off in a rate versus what you're trading off for, you know, potential cash flows.
We're anticipating needing 24, but getting authorization for 27. And I see your third assumption here is the land sale being completed by January 1st.
Mhm.
If that gets delayed 6 months or 7 months and we get pushed into the next fiscal year, so we're losing $4.5 million, but we built in a buffer for 3. So that was just my last question about if that's the case. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's you know, so what's our relief valves?
Yeah, as far
Last
as
year,
the
last
additional
year.
relief valve, yeah, to
Right,
make up that
right.
extra $1.5 million if that doesn't happen on time.
So first off, we got a $3 million built right in. And then last year, and I could grab my file, I think it's 3.3 or 3.8 is what we held on the insurance payments. So we're talking around 6 plus.
We're able to do that again,
Correct,
if
yeah.
need be.
And we're running a surplus in that fund also, so if need be. So that's two major relief valves right there.
So if the land sales don't happen, we'd still be okay with the 27 million?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's getting very expensive.
That said, maybe you asked for 28, I don't know.
Well, right, and as in this prior year, I mean, you know, this is a cash flow projection. It's outdated as soon as I printed it on the printer. But remember, you know, if we had to do, if you know, whatever, we had to do some kind of supplemental borrowing in the spring, you know, that's also a possibility too, especially if we're just waiting on land sales. You know, that would definitely be some kind of an option, supplemental borrowing with pending land sales at 60 days out or something. That's going to be very doable. So, you know, we can't foresee everything, but we certainly plan for those we can.
Anything else on cash flow? Any other business? With that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.